Former President Trump becomes the first U.S. president to face federal charges. That announcement comes as he is right in the thick of campaigning to secure the Republican nomination. Dr. Susan Roberts, political science professor at Davidson College, is here to help us unpack some of the impact. Good morning, Dr. Roberts.
Good morning.
All right, we were watching the GOP convention in Greensboro very closely, and early polls are still showing that Trump is the front runner. Yesterday, you heard his supporters cheering him on at the convention. How will these accusations impact Trump's popularity with his base?
Well, I think in North Carolina, a very good indicator was the fact that the Republicans at the state convention censured Thom Tillis because of his support or not really discrimination of the rights of gay persons, and also that the North Carolina Republicans endorsed some voting restrictions. And that can either be, you can say, restrictions against fraud or restrictions against Blacks and other groups. And so that to me is a signal that North Carolina is going to go very conservative. And I think Trump is going to do very well in North Carolina.
Yeah, we're already seeing some of those early numbers. And yesterday, when we heard him speak, we heard him discrediting the DOJ, once again proclaiming his innocence. How do you think Trump will spin this whole thing on the campaign trail?
Well, I think he's got one new word that he didn't have the last time around, weaponization. And I think it's really consistent with I am your retribution. And I think that's going to be the way that he spins it. I am the victim. And I think the way he spins it is going to really it's going to tie the hands of Democrats, and it's going to tie the hands of all Republicans, because what they'll say is alleged, and they'll say, free and fair trial. And all the Republicans, the major Republicans have said that, and the Democrats as well. And I think it's going to be an issue that can't enter into much discussion. Trump will say the Biden Justice Department, therefore tying Biden's name to everything that comes down the pike about this investigation.
Yeah, we can already see that strategy happening. We were sort of surprised to hear Ron DeSantis, Florida governor, speak on Friday. He didn't really mention Trump's case or the allegations in his address to the North Carolina GOP. So what do you make of that strategy?
Well, I think that's all he can do right now, even though they're all the candidates, besides Chris Christie, who's polling at about 1%, have, hands off Donald Trump. They've talked about some issues, but I think if this is the narrative about this indictment, it'll be sort of policy free. And that's going to hurt all the other candidates. DeSantis is trying to keep that double digit. He's double digit behind, like 56 for Trump, 23 for DeSantis. Can he move that needle? And when you look at this, this is going to motivate the Trump base and motivate the MAGA voters. And because the other candidates don't want to alienate that base, I think it won't help DeSantis. Whether it hurts him, that remains to be seen.
Yeah, we will be watching that so closely. And of course, Mike Pence, former vice president, will likely be called as a witness in this case. We heard him speaking yesterday at the convention, and he had some really strong words about how he was not going to break the law for former President Trump and how he was going to choose the Constitution every time. How do you think that this will possibly impact his campaign?
Well, I think it could make him different from some of the other candidates in that he's reiterating what he feels is the Constitution, and this was an extremely grave, charge against Constitution and the Presidential Records Act. I think it could help him, but only marginally. And I think people will they look back and say, yes, but Trump, asked Pence to do something, and he could have stopped this, and so on and so forth. So I think there's going to be a predictable narrative, I think, from every Republican candidate, and a predictable narrative from every Democrat. And Joe Biden will not be able to address this head on, at least at this point. It's widely expected that this case will not be decided until after 2024.
That's very interesting. So You kind of touched on it already, but the Republican Party in North Carolina, they censured Thom Tillis. They're heavily backing Trump, the candidate that's facing 37 federal charges. What does that say about the state of the Republican Party in North Carolina?
Well, I think if you look at it, Thom Tillis wrote a letter to, I believe it was the New York Times or the Washington Post, saying that he opposed Trump's use of the emergency powers for the wall. He didn't say he opposed the wall. And that's one of the things, the devil is in the details, but people don't need to hear that. They just want to add that to their dissatisfaction with Thom Tillis. And I think that's something that is a bellwether to what's going to happen in North Carolina. The one thing that's not certain is what will the independents do, or the unaffiliated voters, as we say in North Carolina? Are they going to fall on which side, the Republicans or the Democrats? And that we only have a snapshot yet, and we'll see what the polls indicate after a month or two.
Yes, those independent voters will be critical to whoever wins the next presidential election. Thanks so much for joining us, Dr. Susan Roberts from Davidson College.
Thank you.